What's up, everyone? This is Prince Robert Onyejiak with Prince Tech TV. In this discussion, I'm speaking with Pauline Sehlabela. She is the head of PMO for Fundy SA. Fundy SA is the leading education and finance company in South Africa. So they have a very unique way of doing things, and she has a lot to do with it. Stay tuned. Hello, Pauline. How are you doing today?
Great, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining this vlog series. The viewers would have a lot to learn from you. And I wanted to first start off if you could tell us a little bit about your company that you work for and what does that company do?
Our company, we're in the financial services sector. We have a special focus in terms of education. So we fund students for their bursary, for their tuition, books, accommodation, and we also do the bursary administration on behalf of our clients.
Okay, sounds good. And so you currently hold the head of PMO for that. What is that like? What is some of the day-to-day activities that you partake in from that position?
Okay, you're correct. I'm the head of PMO at Fundi, South Africa. So my day-to-day work really involves around making sure that our project managers are in line with executing the projects that have been allocated to them. So what I would do really in first thing in the morning, because obviously of the pandemic, is that just to keep in touch with my team, we have our daily stand-up. So just for them to report back in terms of how far their projects, what are some of the challenges they've got, and how I can assist as their manager as well.
Interesting.
So we review really all our projects from all the priorities that we have, and we realign in terms of our priorities from a PMO perspective. And normally my day is normally packed really with meetings. So I'll have feedbacks or some of my personal projects that I'm running for the organization. So it will really involve in terms of meeting with the teams, in the project teams, and just really understanding in terms of where they are, what are some of the challenges, but also in terms of reporting back to our stakeholders. So because we have various meetings that we have either at a project level or at a steercom level or at an executive level. So I do sit also in the executive committee where I do my own team reporting in terms of the PMO, in terms of how are all the strategic projects being ran.
Oh, nice. So from doing that, like what are some of the bigger challenges that you come across? Do you feel like?
Oh, I think our challenges are not unique. They're similar to some of the organizations. Firstly, it's just really around the fact that you've got so many initiatives in organizations and so many things that organization wants to accomplish, but you don't have sufficient resources. So it's a matter of really trying to balance the current resources that you have, and also trying to manage the demand or the expectation from a senior level perspective. So it is really trying to say what is really important for business right now, getting the priority right. I think that is really our biggest challenge in terms of saying which are the projects that we need to be executing now and which one we need to execute later. And how are those also those projects going to benefit the organization? I think sometimes as well, we find that as much as something is sellable, in a sense of a good business case, that sometimes you find that the business case are also not as well feasible, in a sense of saying they're not really stipulating some of the benefits organization will receive out of executing that particular project. So those are some of our challenges, really having that balance between in terms of the portfolio of projects that we have, but also just having the skills in terms of having robust, feasible business cases that support and actually articulate some of the benefits that will be received.
Okay. So a lot of it has to do with being able to align the strategy and decide which projects to push forward win? Which one's going to bring the most value in this? I guess I want to say the shortest amount of time, or
It's not really about a shortest amount of time, but in terms of saying where is the organization going? So that's the strategy, obviously, as you've mentioned, but which one should it be time to market? So
on the
really
market.
gauging the market and saying, for now, for this period, for the first 6 months of the financial year, we need to be executing this particular projects, which will be able to assist us in getting into the market at the right time. And then later on, then having the second batch or the third batch of projects. So it's really around that balancing and really understanding the market, because at the end of the day, you as an organization, you do operate in the industry, and you need to also be able to time that industry and say, what is our customers looking for, and what is the best projects that we can be able to give to our customers.
Right. And so that's interesting. So my thing is like, what are some of the things that like drive the demand for, your projects? Like, what are, I guess like what do you do to choose which ones I'm going to roll out first, per se?
We follow a particular framework in terms of doing our prioritization. So we've got different metrics that we rate from executive perspective. So obviously, the first metric being aligning our projects to strategy. Is the project that we are executing aligned to strategy? That's number one. What is the financial return? So we look at the bottom line. Thirdly, we also look in terms of the risk. How risky is that particular project? Will we be able to really, in terms of us executing it, does it need so many resources that, it will drain the organization? And thirdly, we also look in terms of really some of the benefits that the project is bringing to the table. So there's all those different metrics, and we give it a bit of a weighting. Some of it will get a bigger weighting. For example, our financial return will get, let's say, for example, a 30% weighting versus the risk factor maybe getting a 10% weighting. So that's how we do. But we try to really do it more independently, because we do understand that, sometimes the loudest voice,
Yeah.
will sometimes get the favor. So we really try to do it objectively, based really on facts, and really just being emotionally driven.
Right. Yeah. You try to definitely keep the emotion out of it, and there's some sort of metrics that help you weigh. I guess it's based off of some criteria that you guys may put on Excel or some sort of
Correct.
tool that helps to say, okay, this project is going to bring this amount of value compared to this one. And then you also looking at the negative impact um, that could potentially happen based on the risk, et cetera, and seeing, just weighing everything out and making a decision. Okay. So you talk, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to highlight the fact that as we spoke about challenges early on, like I mentioned, our business cases obviously drives that prioritization. So the more robust, the more refined, the more feasible the business case is, the better it is for us to do that work. But we find that because our business units are not necessarily finds don't have the skills to sometimes put those feasible and reliable business cases, it becomes a challenge of saying, how do you interpret this business case and try to then get it more prioritized? So that's really some of the
Right.
challenges that we have. So we're finding that the capability of having strong business case is really a need in our organization, and it's something that we're looking at and making sure that we uh, we are giving that skill to our, especially our managers and executives.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that, because if the business case isn't completely refined and crystallized, then you're not able to appropriately weigh it against other projects. So I'm guessing you guys probably use like what, business analysts to create the business cases, or you use project managers?
We use business analyst, but I think to a larger extent as well, them extracting that information from the business, they need to obviously, the business
Yeah.
lead is to obviously assist them in terms of articulating exactly what they're looking for. And I think the bigger challenge is really around our financial calculations because everything resides there, proper projections. If you're saying it's going to, the project it will yield, for example, sales or revenue of 2 million rand, is that feasible? What is the basis of that? What are those assumptions? So it's really around those challenges that we have.
Okay. Yeah, so you're basically, being able to prove out the value that it's going to bring. What is the earned value? What is the return on investment? And I know a lot of companies struggle with the same thing because they'll say, to get a project approved, you have to be able to prove out the return on investment and, the earned value. So in that respect, like, what are some ways that you guys are able to look at these proposals and say, okay, this is just not refined all the way, or this is just not crystal clear? Because from somebody else's perception, it may be crystal clear, but to yours, you feel like this is not complete. So how do you decipher whether this is a complete document or it's not?
Firstly, we have a standard template that we use. So just to assist us in terms of doing comparing apples to apples, if I can call it that way. So we have a standard template that we use. So each department obviously will bring forth their business cases and their standardized template. And what we do as a team is that we normally will assess it from the PMO perspective in terms of there's just certain areas that we focus on. And number one is the goal clear, what we're trying to achieve. Number two, as I've mentioned, the financials are quite important. Number three, we also look in terms of saying when is the project going to be implemented? What is the time frame or what is required? Is it really linked to other projects as well? So we use a certain criteria just to assess and say, are those things clearer? Are they coming out clearer from the business case? If yes, then we obviously summarize it for you to be taken to the executive committee for final decision.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And then my other question is, as it relates to IT resources, you said that one of the challenges is you may not have the resources to, implement a certain solution or develop a certain product. How do you guys go around getting the proper resources that you need? Because I've heard that against or other people that have, interviewed, that having the proper resources to have the skill sets needed can be a challenge, because you may bring somebody in, you may assume that they do, but when they get in, they don't. So then you have to go back and find somebody else.
I think for us, we've got our in-house development team, but also we have external service providers that will also assist our internal team should we have capacity issues.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily around the skill per se, it's really around the fact that the team has got so many projects that they need to juggle. And you find that you then, you're wrestling around to say, how do I balance them appropriately? So it's really around the resource balancing to say, where do you focus your energy in first and foremost? And how do you ensure that there's better productivity? That's really our biggest challenge, to ensure that because we're running our projects more in an agile way, to say if we're running a sprint, that resource is fully delivering on what that sprint is required. So at the end of the day, you can be able to complete your project. I guess just showing the value back to business. So it's really around to say we've got a small pool of resources. So, and you've got this bigger demand. So it's just really balancing the two of saying, how do you ensure that your resource is optimized, but also you're not necessarily wanting to overload the resource. So it's really about how to balance. Yes, it's the balancing effects. That is really a challenge.
That's interesting, because other people, they'll focus more on the skill set and say, okay, these people are not able to perform, so we need to replace them. but you guys feel like you have the proper team, but it's just about balancing. Okay, so if we can't get this done, then we may want to outsource a little bit, or we don't want to overload, overwork, and that's I think that's a way that a lot of leaders should put more focus and more attention on the thing of balance. I think that's a really good strategy, opposed to always finding
Yeah.
the star players.
Yeah. So I think your team will always deliver the best that they can deliver to you, as long as they know that you've got their back and you look after them. So I think that for me is so much key in terms of really believing that my team can deliver. Um, Instead of saying I want the best and the better, the best and the better.
Right.
What you have, how can you use it effectively? How can you ensure that they're giving you the best output? And I think sometimes as leaders, we miss that and we want, always the best and the better. What you have, how can you use it optimally to give
Yeah.
you the best? Because at the end of the day is about output. At the end of the day is about those people that you are leading them, having trust in you and you trusting them as well. So it's a trust issue as well sometimes. It's not necessarily that they don't have the skill. It's about how do you bring the best out of them. So in the day, everybody wins. So it becomes more a win-win situation.
Yes. Do you ever find it to where you make mistakes on the balance? You, where you guys may say, okay, we feel like this is enough balance to implement this solution or develop this solution, but we're just completely off track on the project. And then if so, like, what do you do?
Yeah, I guess those are everyday project management challenges where, where you do almost sometimes you estimate, you do your planning, but sometimes you do have those risks, especially now with the pandemic, as I said. You find that one of the team members is either sick or, so your project will slide, or they've got some other family challenges, or maybe the family member is, not feeling well because obviously of the pandemic. So those are the challenges that actually we have faced, I think, over the couple of months. So it's really about, for me, managing expectation. Firstly, we're just raising it as a risk. I mean, we have our steer calm where we look at the full portfolio and we highlight our risk, we put mitigation plans together, and we really align ourselves with our sponsors and ensuring that they also understand in terms of saying, what are some of the challenges that we're facing? Because at the end of the day, some of the risks, yes, we can mitigate them, but some of them, it's someone falling sick is something that you can't control. So
Right.
as I said, we do also have our backup in terms of external service providers that assist us where we need to now push and go into market, and we've got time constraints. So those are really some of the things that we put in place. But I think the most important thing is that have proper communication, align with your stakeholders, align with your sponsors, let them understand every step of the way what are some of the challenges, how you're mitigating those challenges, so that at the end of the day you're not having misalignment that causes confusion and you're having your project being labeled as it's not delivering on what is intended to deliver. So I think it's important that you align with the stakeholders.
Yes. Yeah, because they have to be, as you already know, very involved from start to finish.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you guys have to be on the same page. You have to be aligned. And
Yeah. And I think that speaks to a lot of change management, Robert. I think for us as an organization, it's one of also the areas that we had been challenged for a while because we did not have the capability in terms of change management. We've invested in that. We've seen that change management and project management goes hand in hand. If
oh
you
yeah,
don't have, if you don't work with the people, as you've said, from the beginning to the end, your project will not succeed. So that's one of the things that we have invested in. We've got change agents, we've got change managers that assist us in terms of from the beginning of the project, really understand in terms of how are we going to engage on the human side of things, engaging with the users, etc., to ensure that everybody's aligned in terms of the solution and it gets the buy-in as well and the support.
okay. Interesting. And so my next question is this: how long have you been in project management per se?
I've been in project management for over 12 years.
Wow.
So I started really in um, 2011, no, no, 2008.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I've been in the space for over 12 years.
Over 12 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather today. But
No.
yeah, so you've been in project management for over 12 years. And through your time and experience, it took you this time to understand the fact of uh, being able to balance your resources was a high priority. Is that something that you've more recently learned, or is that like you've always known that? Because from my thinking is, a lot of people, they'll take an exam, or they'll get maybe a very short period of experience, and there's a lot of things that they may be missing. But I want to know, for you, is it something that was developed over time, or is it like this is something you got to just know out of the gate to do this the kind of work that you're doing?
I think it's something that I've developed over time. It's not something that you immediately, especially as you grow from a junior project manager, you don't always really are focused on the resources. You're more focused in terms of, oh, I want to make sure that my scope is right, my budget is on time, my budget is within budget, and my project is within. So you focus on your triple constraint, and you don't necessarily focus so much on the resources, because sometimes the resources might be also out of your reach. As your junior project manager, you don't have much say in terms of
That's a good
the
point.
resources. You normally just get what you want, or you just fight for a resource. But as you grow and as you manage programs, you get to the portfolio level, you get more, control of the resources, but more in terms of really understanding to say, if we need to be successful, we need to balance our resources. So it's something that you really gain over a period of time, but also in terms as you mature in project management and you get to the senior role where you now have a voice and you can be able to contribute at that level to say, how do we manage our resources? How do we ensure that we filter this demand to meet the resources? So yeah, so it is over a long period of time.
Okay. Well, that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that we've well, at least for myself, I've learned a lot, because a lot of times I've always thought I need the right resources, or people need the right resources to be in place. Yours is more so of, weighing the workload and weighing out the demand. And I think this has been a great interview, and I really appreciate it. Sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, but I want to last leave with, was there anything else that you would like to leave with the viewers?
I guess just in terms of really leading in the times of pandemic, I think for us the biggest challenge is just to say, how do we use technology effectively to manage our projects and ensure that there's still good balance between work and life, and having proper, productivity at the same time. So it's something that obviously as a team we are, working ourselves through. It's also not to say, what, while we are in this, going through this, I think, um, unprecedented times, how do you ensure that your team becomes productive? So it's really ensuring that there's trust, you ensuring that you put things in place that, you ensure that you are kept abreast of the developments, you know exactly what is happening in each and every project, and you give support and you lead with empathy. So I think sometimes we just want to look in terms of saying, has this been done? Has that been done? And sometimes we
Right.
lose the personal um, perspective and saying, what are people going through when you're not really seeing them eye to eye, because, obviously,
The
the
empathy.
distance. Yeah, so it's really around leading with empathy. That I think that's, for me, that's really something that is awakening through this period of saying, how do we as leaders lead with empathy, still getting the same results, even more. So during this period, because it's easy just to look at the bottom line and forget a person.
Yeah.
But I think now more than ever, it's for us to really bring our team, really get to know them a little bit more, and support them so that you can get the best out of your team.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Definitely, empathy is something that's always, been left out, and at the end of the day, that's going to drive your ultimate success and outcomes because your team performs better whenever they feel like you have their back. And if you just don't care about them, you just care about the bottom line and what they can produce, they're not going to be as motivated. So that's a very great point. So yes, I appreciate this, Pauline. This was a very great interview, and I hope that we can stay in contact. And yeah, I really appreciate it again.
Pleasure, Robert, and thanks for the invite.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Okay.